Hi guys, so this video is about async JavaScript. We will be covering a couple of topics in this video. I want to cover callbacks, promises and async await. All of these are used to handle the asynchronous data. What that means is when some function is being executed and you don't want to wait for it to complete. Let's get started and create our three separate JavaScript files. First one is callbacks.js, the second one is promises.js, and third one is asyncawait.js. And then in our index.html file I will create an h1 tag to distinguish between the JS file being executed. And then at the end of the body we will add a script tag, and first we will use the callbacks.js. In our callbacks.js file we will create an array of fruits. Secondly, we will create a function called print fruits, and in order to mimic the behavior of fetching the data from server, we will use set timeout. It will take callback as first parameter and the number of milliseconds as second parameter. Inside our callback, we will access the unordered list that we created in our index.html file, and then we will loop through our fruits array to push those fruit items to the DOM. We will create a list item, and then we will set the list dot inner HTML to the fruit dot name, and at the end we will push this list item to the unordered list. Let's say use the 100 milliseconds as a delay. And then secondly we will create a function called add fruits. It will take a new fruit object as a parameter, and we will again use set timeout with a delay of 200 milliseconds this time. Here we only have to push the new fruit. Then we will create a function called init, where we will put our initialization logic. First of all, we will set the h1 tag text to callbacks. Then we will call the print fruits function. After that, we will create a new fruit object with name watermelon and color red. We will execute the add fruit function with our newly created new fruit object, and then we will call the init function and refresh the page. As you can see, we have the three fruits from our fruits array. The thing is, when print fruits gets called with 100 milliseconds of delay, it adds these fruit items to the DOM. And after that, once the add fruit function gets called with 200 milliseconds, it cannot add the fourth fruit to the DOM. So how we resolve it is to stop the execution of print fruits until add fruits get called. So we will pass a second parameter callback, and once the newly created fruit gets added to the fruits array, we execute the callback function. Now we will remove the print fruits function and pass it as a second parameter to add fruit, and if we refresh the page, you can see we gets the fourth fruit as well. So what it does is it first adds the fourth fruit to the array, and then it calls the callback. So for the second part we will need most of the same code, so we just copy it to our promises.js file and change the file name to promises.js, and change the title to promises as well. And the first function stays the same, which will print our fruits array. In second function, instead of callbacks, we will remove the callbacks, and we have to return a new promise. So we will return a promise which will take a callback with two parameters, resolve and reject, and we will move our logic inside this callback. We will create a new variable for error handling. Let's create a variable, and here we will check if there is no error. Then we will resolve this promise, else we have to reject it by sending an error message, something went wrong. and then in our init function we have to stop using the callback. Instead we have to use the then block, which gets executed once the promise is resolved, and in our then block we will call our print fruits function once the add fruit is executed. So if we refresh the page, you will see we get the 4 fruit items. So the third part of the tutorial is about async await. It is not a new approach of defining the promises, but it's a different approach of calling these promises. So we will just copy the same code and change the file name to async await, and also change the title to async await. So in our inside add fruit function, the promise stays the same. The only difference is that instead of calling the print fruits in the then block, we will execute the print fruits in the same way we use it in synchronous programming, and we will use a keyword called await in front of add fruit function, and wherever you use await you have to add a keyword called async in front of the function where you are calling it. So if we refresh the page, you will see we are getting the 4 fruit items, and it works just the way it is supposed to work. So that was all from the today's tutorial. I hope you liked it.